Sense of smell, I would say it's probably one of the most underrated senses. There was a survey done, I think it was like 5 years ago, where they asked a large amount of people, like 1,000 people, if they would rather give up their cell phone or their sense of smell. And like 80% of the people said their sense of smell that they would wanna give up. Which is interesting though, because I think if we ask people now, like post-COVID, where a lot of people actually did lose their sense of smell, I think that number would change dramatically. Yeah, you've completely said exactly what it is everyone's thinking that's listening is I didn't care until COVID happened. I think it's either that or touch, but then you think about it and you're like, no, actually it impacts so much. And I know for you, you have a really interesting well-being journey that ties into aromatherapy. If you feel comfortable to share. A registered nurse, I've been a registered nurse for almost 20 years. And in nursing school, like we didn't really learn about like the holistic framework of medicine and supporting our bodies. And we never learned about aromatherapy. That was something that maybe on one page somewhere along the line it said aromatherapy is alternative medicine or complementary medicine, but we didn't learn anything really about it. And I always experienced just terrible, painful periods since I was like a teenager, just terrible periods. I remember my mom taking me to the emergency room when I was like 16 years old and seeing the doctors in the emergency room and them telling me, well, this is just how it is kind of thing. And I thought, wow, I must just be a wuss. Like, I don't know why I can't handle this pain. Like, there's something wrong with me. In 2010, my husband actually took me to the hospital because I woke up in just dire pain in the middle of the night. And they took me into surgery, and I had an endometrioma that ruptured. And at that time, I finally knew it wasn't all in my head that I was dealing with this pain. And they told me I had stage 4 endometriosis. But I remember I had this diagnosis and we sat down with a doctor for the follow up. And she was like, there's nothing we can do. There's no cure. The only way to help you feel better is to be on birth control. And I was like, because birth control, and I know there's a time and a place for birth control, but it gave me terrible migraines and it just made my mood off. And I was like, I also want to have kids. Like, how do I have kids and also be on birth control? So I just have to deal with this pain. It ended up that, I went through a lot of infertility struggles, over the next couple of years after that. We went through IVF. Thankfully, we were able to have one child through IVF. Then we ended up adopting my son, and I had small children at home. And I was like, I cannot be in this pain and take care of my kids. I'm like, there has to be another way. That's when I just I took like little baby steps just to kind of see. So the first thing I did was like changed up my diet and I went on like an anti-inflammatory diet. And after about like 2 months of that, I had a period that wasn't painful the first one in my entire life. And I kept thinking about my lifestyle. So I added a little bit more of like, kind of healthy steps along the way. I started exercising more. I prioritized my sleep. And I found aromatherapy in the midst of that, having little children, when they were sick. So I ended up getting essential oils. And the first time I diffused anything around them when they weren't feeling well, it was like lavender, lemon, and peppermint. And not only did I notice that they weren't sneezing or coughing or congested as much, but I also noticed that they weren't like bickering as much as little children do. They seemed a lot happier. And I thought, wow, that's pretty amazing. So then I started using aromatherapy for other things just to help support, our sleep. My husband also works in medicine in a very stressful job. So he wakes up several times in the middle of the night. So I started diffusing at nighttime just for him, black spruce and lavender. And he slept hard through the night. So then I was like, wow. So then I started using essential oils just to help support my hormones as well and applying just a hormone supporting roller every single night. Haven't had a painful period in over 7 years. Not a single one. Half the time it shows up and I'm like, oh, I forgot you were coming today. So it's pretty amazing just how these little steps every single day make a huge impact on how we feel. Even my doctor, I've seen her recently, and she was like, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it because you look amazing. You're feeling amazing. Just keep doing it. And she's like, I thought for sure the next time I would see you, you would need a hysterectomy and we would have to, take out your uterus. And that was the only way to make you feel better. And I'm like, no, not today. I'm keeping that because I need that right now. It's good for me to stay in there. So it's pretty amazing. It's incredible, your journey, and I know a little bit about it already, but the fact that you had this huge health situation where many people just kind of accept with what they're told, take the birth
Yeah.
control, do the hysterectomy. I mean, these are huge choices, some of which you cannot take back. Birth control, of course, you can, but not surgery. And that you explored the lifestyle aspect. And I think that's a really important message because I know people listening might have things that they feel are incurable and maybe they aren't. Maybe it's about managing it, or they might feel like they don't know how to manage their periods, for example, because they're so painful. I mean, I think that's most the audience. But to know that there are ways, I love that you shared that and that you shared the many ways that it also helped in your own family with sleep for your husband, with helping your kids calm down. I mean, like that's a miracle in itself. You should sell that.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
like the
I think
magic roller.
yes. I know, right? I think most people in general, they just have no idea how good their body is designed to feel. Like we are so used to feeling just stressed and tension, or if you have a chronic disease, just knowing, oh, that pain is just something I have to deal with the rest of my life. Like so many people struggle with just, back pain or headaches and they just surrender to it. Like, we just have to kinda, like, step out of that comfort zone of feeling like we're surrendering to those conditions to promote just healing within our body.
When you're speaking about this, it's not just your area of expertise, aromatherapy, but you also, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I want to mention it now that you also make products and books that support that. So it's because I think sometimes it's hard. You hear, oh, yeah, I should grab the essential oils or I should do this, but you don't really think about what does that mean? Which ones do I select? How do I implement it in my life? If, for example, I'm traveling all the time, but I know that there are ways and I want to explore that with you. But I think the first question to go back to is what is the power specifically of aromatherapy in this? Because you've mentioned the effects, what it can create, but what's happening in the brain? How is scent impacting our moods, our physical condition, our emotions? This is the geek out part.
Yes, here we go. Here we go. Let's warm up. Oh, well, first, like for those that don't know what aromatherapy is, it's the practice of using natural essential oils, not synthetic ones that are sold like in the dollar section at Target. No, natural, pure essential oils that are extracted from, different parts of the plant. So flowers, stems, roots, leaves. And they are steam distilled or expressed to just enhance physiological or physical well being. So, the science behind them is really what intrigued me to kind of do what I do now, because all of this was happening with my children, my husband, and I was like, "Okay, this is cool, but show me the science." Like, I just have that bachelor's of science in my brain. Like, tell me what exactly, how is this working? So I started reading, ENT, ear, nose, and throat doctor textbooks from I checked out from the like medical library. I was like geeking out, reading all these studies, and my husband would laugh at me. He's like, "You're really reading an ENT textbook?" And I'm like, "Yes, because this whole chapter is like all about our factory system, and I want to know, like, tell me exactly how this works." Because I need that credibility. That's just me as a person, like, I don't want, essential oils to a lot of people are just, this, like, stigma and a placebo and all of this, and I'm like, "No, I wanna know why this is actually working." So, I started reading about, their chemical constituents. So, essential oils are broken down into dozens to hundreds of chemical constituents, and these have been shown through research to have varying effects. When we inhale, like, a calming essential oil or any essential oil, these just kinda, like, trigger these molecules will trigger just electrical signals within the olfactory bulb, and then those nerve axons extend to the perimedial cortex, would then go to the limbic system. And I know that's a lot of words for people that aren't into science, but basically, our limbic system is the most important part. So, our limbic system is also known as like our emotional command center. So, this is a part of the brain that is important for emotions and behaviors and motivations. It's also important for forming long term memory. So, it's this complex set of brain structures. And in particular, it contains our amygdala, which a lot of people kind of heard that word on and off, but that's important for our stress response, our fight or flight response, as well as our hippocampus, which is in charge of just forming these long term memories. So, Our olfactory system has the most direct connection to the limbic system compared to any of our other senses. So, in contrast, when we see something or touch something or taste something or hear something, those first go to the thalamus of our brain, which processes it, and then that sends it to our cerebral cortex for interpretation. But our olfactory system, when we smell something, it first goes to the limbic system before it is sent, on to the cerebral cortex for interpretation. So it has this direct connection. It was actually Dr. Rachel Hers, she's a cognitive neuroscientist, has done a ton of research on our sense of smell, has said that our olfactory system, our pyramidal cortex and our olfactory system, the limbic system actually grew from our olfactory system. So, in other words, our ability to experience smell came from our ability to experience emotions, which is why they're just so linked together. So, because of this, like those complex constituents within essential oils, they can really help just kind of transform stress responses. They can induce relaxation and just kind of potentially reduce the damaging effects of stress.
I should probably just highlight the one thing that I think stands out the most is we started this conversation by saying how much people undervalue scent. But in fact, you've just shown why it's one of the most important ones, that in fact, like the way you experience emotions is so highly determined by your perceiving your environment through the sense of smell. And we don't even think about it. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
So I often say, like, scent is the silent storyteller of emotions. So
Oh.
aromas in general just have this huge impact on us every single day. And a lot of us take that for granted and don't even really recognize this. It's actually estimated that 75% of emotions that we experience on a daily basis are impacted by smells around us. And I know that sounds crazy. You're like 75%, really? But just like as you go about your day, pay attention to the smells around you and how they make you feel. But even just, not just negative smells, but also positive smells. Chocolate chip cookies, for example, there's a reason why when people are trying to sell a house, they're instructed to bake the chocolate chip cookies in the house. And that has been shown to increase sales of houses because people associate that smell of chocolate chip cookies with being home and warmth and comfort. Even oranges is another really great example of this. Coffee is another example of this. The reason why people love coffee, it's not the taste. Well, that could be some of it, but it's the smell. I mean, if I say the word Starbucks, immediately you know what that smell is like. Like you immediately your brain is like, "Oh." And
You
just think
think of
about
the
as you
smell.
Yes, Starbucks, and just think about how you feel in your body. Like, even just thinking about that smell, 80% of flavor in food comes from the smell of food. It's not, anything else but the smell, which is why when people lost their sense of smell in COVID, they were like, "Oh, I can't taste anything. Everything tastes bland. Like, I don't wanna eat." They had a, lower appetite because they had no sense of smell, or even as, like, elderly patients, as their sense of smell diminishes, so does their appetite for food because everything tastes bland, or they add a ton of salt to things because it doesn't taste as much, which is why we need to utilize our sense of smell as much as we can because it really just impacts just our emotional health. Even in nature too, like, I could get into nature as well, just
Oh,
walking
we wanna
outside.
ask.
Yeah.
Yeah, the nature stuff I wanna ask you about separately for sure, but I've got 2 questions to kind of follow up
Mm,
with it. One is backing up to when you were talking about the science a little bit. So if we know that obviously the scents affect your emotions, how is it that certain scents impacts certain emotions and moods? How does that work exactly? Like, where is that coming from that lavender can help you sleep? I don't know if that affects melatonin production or
mhm.
I know you were talking about too today about how I can't remember if it was grapefruit or some sort of citrus scent that helps you wake up in the afternoon. Maybe it wasn't citrus at all. But what is that? Why is it certain scents produce certain chemical
There's
reactions?
Yeah, this is a great question. So there's really kind of like 2 parts to this answer. So one is those chemical constituents. So some essential oils contain chemical constituents that just have been shown to have these varying effects within our body. So for example, like citrus, like grapefruit, orange, lemon, bergamot, these essential oils are really high in a chemical constituent called limonene, which has been
Mm.
known to just uplift mood. So that's one. Lavender, for example, is high in a chemical constituent linalool and linalool acetate, which has been shown to really kind of calm the nervous system. It has more sedative properties. So it kind of comes down to the chemistry of the essential oils. The second part to that question, though, is our associations, which with
Mm.
those aromas. So, as we know, when I was talking about, the limbic system and the anatomy of it, and our hippocampus is actually in charge of forming these long-term memories. We've kind of like learned in the past, it's actually something called odor conditioning. So, like, for example, memory, like I grew up on a Christmas tree farm. So I love the smell of Christmas trees, any like tree aromas. It reminds me of home, of being safe and happy. It brings back all these memories. The sense of smell actually evokes more emotionally vivid memories than any other sense. Scents that soothed us as children continue to alleviate anxiety and stress for the rest of our lives because we formed these memories and associations, when we were young. So the most pronounced memories and associations actually form before the age of 10 years old. Bring back these long lost memories. This is the reason why people will cling to deceased loved ones' clothes after they pass away and they smell them and they're brought to tears. And they think about all these memories that they had with them in their past. There's so many examples. You smell, fresh baked cookies and you think of your grandma. So this is the other part of it is that we start to associate those aromas with certain reactions. Like, for example, if you take a bath and you're adding, Epsom salts to the bath and maybe some lavender essential oil, you're adding it with a carrier oil or a bath gel. You now have this association with lavender being calming. So when you smell it, at different times of the day, maybe when you're feeling stressed, you smell it, your brain's like, "Oh yeah, I remember that aroma. Oh yeah, I remember that it was really calming."
I wasn't sold before, but I am now.
Yeah, I love.
No, I think, like, it's something you alluded to earlier, like, hearing about the chemistry and the association with memory, I think most people listening can see that and can remember and think, "Yes, this makes sense." But you know how some of them, unfortunately, essential oils have gone down the, like, affiliate marketing, pyramid scheme
Mm,
thing, and then it sort of dilutes the actual power and science behind it, which is why you were so keen to make sure that you had the science. And obviously, you
yeah.
have the health background anyways as an RN, but I feel like it's something we don't talk a lot about in a serious way. It's always like,
Mm,
"Yeah, get the essential oil," but this, what you're saying, is so much more powerful that it makes such a difference. Is there a way to do you recommend kind of not a the opposite of a taste test, like a smell test to figure out what scents affect you in what ways? Is there
mm.
something that people can do like that to see, "Oh, this is the one for me to wake up. This
Yeah.
is the one for me to relax?"
Oh, I love this question. Absolutely, there is. So if we're using essential oils for stress or like any way to support our mind or body, we always want to choose essential oils that we find aromatically pleasing. So if I don't love the smell of like clary sage, it's not going to help me. It really is that psychological aspect. Well, potentially it could still help you in various ways physiologically, yes, like balancing hormones and all that. But the psychological aspects will be much less pronounced. It actually can create like a further stress response for the body. Maybe we associate that smell with something traumatic in our past. That's not going to help us, right? So we always want to choose essential oils that are aromatically pleasing for our mind and body. What I do, like with my children, I love doing this, is I'll take, 10 essential oils and I'll put them out on the table and I'll have them make, an aromatherapy inhaler. And I love doing this so much with my kids, especially, but you could do this as an adult, like even if you're somewhere where there's essential oils that you can smell freely before you choose to purchase them. And the kids will just pick a different essential oil and smell it. And I watch their reactions. How your body responds just by smelling it. Like, you notice when you smell spruce, for example, I love tree oils, but I smell black spruce and instantly my body's like, "Oh," like it's almost like you have this huge sigh of relief. Like you notice that tension like melting from your shoulders and your heart rate is slowing down and you just feel much more at ease and peaceful. So just kind of figuring out which essential oils kind of help initiate that response for you.
Yeah, this is the missing piece because you always get advice from friends to get this one or that one. I think it was bergamot that was recommended to me as a scent, and I can't stand it because it reminds me of like a musk that I never liked as a kid.
Mm. That's
You
because
know?
bergamot is very commonly used in perfumes just because it has that aroma that really stinks. So you sticks. So you must have some past memories and association with it in a perfume or a cologne of someone in your past that maybe you didn't jive with, or maybe even like you passed them on the street and you were having a bad day that day and you were like, ugh, like it just puts you in a more sour mood. It's so interesting. We can't actually reverse those like negative past memories and associations, but it does take a lot of work and time.
Yeah, it's possible, but I think that's exactly what it is. Like, it must have been someone's scent growing up. I don't know what it is. But it's
Mhm.
interesting too when you mention that because I think about and this could be a whole 'nother episode. I mean, you could do a series of shows, but
I know,
I
I
feel like
know.
the connection between scent and attraction is also such an interesting one because there was this cologne, I think it was Tommy Hilfiger, and I remember it from the time I hit puberty. I was age 13, and all of these guys would wear it, and it was something about, like, that time coming into adolescence and that
Yeah.
smell that even today, almost 40, if I smell that, it doesn't even matter the person, I just smell that, I'm like, "Wow, where are they?"
Yes, because you have such a strong memory scent association with it. It's so amazing how strong our sense of smell is. Like,
Uh-huh.
yeah, and just our connection with others, it plays a huge role in that. Like we can use essential oils to help that with intimacy, like in the bedroom and libido, and they can be just so supportive. We don't realize with women, especially going through like menopause and, the estrogen levels dipping and their libido decreasing, we can actually use aromas to just help
Ah.
them. If we can calm the mind, the body can then relax.
What would you say are some scents that can typically help with that? Whether it's lower libido because of hormonal imbalance, or it could just be you're extremely stressed. Like, what are some of the different blends or unique scents that have been shown to help with that?
So for women in particular, ylang ylang is a huge one. There's a
Mm.
reason why in Indonesia they will put, ylang ylang flowers on the beds of newlyweds just because it helps it's more of an aphrodisiac essential oil, kind of helps set the mood. It's floral, but not too floral. There's a little bit of this undertoning like musky scent to it, but not in a way that you probably associate burger. So that's a really great one. Blue spruce can be helpful, orange. Rose can be really helpful. A lot of people have really strong memories and associations with rose in their past, just with romance. Rose is known as the aroma of romance. So adding them to a lotion on like a date night or something like that, you can kind of like smell it throughout the night to kind of set the mood and make you feel more like confident and feminine can be really helpful.
That's an incredible list. Thank you for sharing those because I think for each one there's something different. And of course, back to your point of exploring them and seeing if that works for you. I think it's really beautiful that you grew up on a Christmas tree farm. It just seems like so poetic that you grew up that way and you're doing this work now. What is the relationship between nature and scent and our well-being? Because you would have had this childhood where you were in this amazing scent and you probably were doing it daily, maybe weekly, but you were in it all of the time. What is the need or the connection? What do we get from even just natural sense in nature?
When we're in nature and we, see our surroundings, maybe you're envisioning like this beautiful like flower field and we see these flowers, our, brains release dopamine, which make us feel good. But when we smell a flower, it's a whole different effect within the body. Not only do our brains release dopamine, but they release serotonin and endorphins, which make us feel good. They also, activate the limbic system then. So that has a role, like we talked about, just on our emotional well being and inducing this relaxation response. Nature in general, I mean, forest bathing is a great example of this for those that aren't kind of aware of forest bathing. But it's just basically immersing yourself in the forest and seeking those benefits physiologically and psychologically. So a lot of those benefits that they've seen through forest bathing come from the aromas released from the trees. So trees release terpenes, also known as an example would be like alpha pinene, which have been shown to reduce stress and reduce cortisol levels and blood pressure and heart rate. And they also can increase focus and mental clarity and benefit the immune system. They can actually increase natural killer cells within the body, which play a huge role in just fighting off unwanted pathogens and actually play a huge role in cancer, which there's been some really interesting research about forest bathing and diseases and cancer in general. They can shift us really into this parasympathetic nervous system state, which just means kind of rest and digest, which is opposite of the fight or flight response. So, what's interesting about like forest bathing is that similar effects have been shown through essential oils that are also derived from trees. So, cypress, hinoki, spruce, fir, all of these essential oils, like just diffusing them or inhaling them, have shown the same effects as they have for those people that have experienced, forest bathing and tracked them through research. So aromas in nature in general can just impact us physically and emotionally and mentally. And you don't necessarily have to go in nature. I know not all of us can take a big long walk in the woods every single day, depending on where we're located in the world and our work schedule and all that, but we can actually just bring these aromas to us and still experience these benefits.
This is where I want to ask you about how to do that because I know like you've talked so much about the stress relaxation and some of the other mood uplifters from scent. And where we especially need that is at work. I think more than anything in the office. What are some ways for people to incorporate those scents in their work environment, keeping in mind they probably can't get a giant diffuser, but there's different
Mhm.
solutions. Like, what are some of the interesting things that you recommend for that?
So, actually, diffusing in work environments is very popular in Japan. Like, you see
Ah,
that everywhere is that they actually diffuse. And they're not always giant diffusers. Like, you can get smaller diffusers. You can also get like handheld diffusers that only like
okay.
will diffuse for like 30 seconds at a time. I actually use them a lot in the hospital with patients that are in labor and delivery or in pain, in a pain unit. They will just push the button and kind of breathe it in. And it's pretty amazing. So,
Huh.
that's one way. So I love to use, there's just simple ways. Like you can get like a diffuser bead necklace and put a drop on the necklace and kind of smell it throughout the day. You can use essential oil roller. So basically what this is has essential oils in it. It's just a little bottle and then you fill the rest with carrier oil because we never want to apply essential oils just undiluted to our skin because they are really potent. It takes 75 lemons to make one bottle of 15 milliliter bottle of lemon essential oil. So we want to kind of respect the oils in that way. So I add some essential oils to a bottle, fill the rest with carrier oil. You can apply a little bit behind your ears to kind of wake you up in the afternoon. If you're in that afternoon slump, you can add a drop maybe to a cotton ball and just kind of keep that like in a little cup near your desk and kind of smell it throughout the day when you need a little bit of like focus or energy. Rosemary is a great oil for that. Peppermint's a great oil for that. Grapefruit, I love for that as well. You can also just use those calming essential oils in the same manner. Like if you're having a really stressful day, maybe carrying an aromatherapy inhaler with you. And just that 1 second of kind of resetting can really just transform your day.
And also imagining a bunch of people in the conference room sniffing on citrus dipped cotton balls.
Yes.
It's going to be a stressful one, guys.
Maybe
But
just
I think
pass it around.
but I think these are really good ways and solutions, and there's lots of ones that you can do. Final question for you before asking where people can connect and find your work is, does it matter because you mentioned you can just sniff the bottle, it's a cost-effective way, to do it as opposed to some of the other ways. Does it matter the concentration of what you're smelling? So, for example, if it is it better is there more of an effect with a diffuser versus on the skin versus underneath, like, just smelling from the bottle? Is there any evidence that supports one method over another?
You know, as long as you can smell it, it's been shown to be beneficial. Like I say, like, don't apply a roller to the bottom of your feet if you're trying to get, a psychological response because you won't be able to smell it down there, right? So applying it, to our shoulders or our neck or behind our ears can be really helpful. As far as like that in contrast with like diffusing, both can be extremely helpful. I mean, diffusing is nice because it continually is releasing these aromatic molecules into the air over extended period of time. I mean, eventually, after about 30 minutes, we engage in something called sensory adaptation, where we're not able to smell it as much. Just same as like if we're cooking, say you're cooking a meal for your significant other and they walk in the house, it's like, oh, it smells so good in here. And you're like, oh, really? Like I can't smell it because our brains basically habituate to that smell. They notice that smell as not being, dangerous. So our brains like stop, our olfactory receptors stop processing it. So with diffusing, we can get that as well. So I always say, diffuse for 30 minutes, then turn it off and then put it back on, an hour later or 30 minutes later, or leave the room and come back and you'll be granted with all these, pleasant aromas again.
Where can people connect with you? Because everything you've shared today is so helpful. I mean, the science alone is astounding how you can really break it down. Where can people connect with you? Where can they find your books? I know you've got such great resources that people can really use.
So everything is Science of Essentials. So my website is www.scienceofessentials.com. So I have a great blog on there. I share things weekly on there. My Instagram is probably my most popular platform. So my Instagram is Science of Essentials, and I'm constantly sharing tips and free guides and stories just about how to use essential oils just to help promote us every single day, just tiny little ways to help kind of make us feel a little bit better, right? Because we all just wanna feel good.
Amazing. I'm going to include links to everything. Thank you for coming on the show and for explaining something in such a deep, rich, and really relatable way. I know it's hard to do that, but you've done such a beautiful job. And I have, for one, been very convinced. I think you've convinced a lot of others. So thank you.